When Doug asked me if I wanted to speak today, I surprised myself by answering yes right away, even though I did realize it was literally the day after Christmas, not just the Sunday after Christmas, but the day after Christmas. And I did that because an outline was already in my head, and I figured we'd sing a lot. The two kind of ideas that I had when I first started was the basic one we've been talking about, that this is our 175th anniversary. There's a fancy name for it, but I'm not going there. And that's one thing, 175 years. And the other is that the Bible study group has been looking at Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, which was written roughly 175 years ago. It's just a year or two, I believe, before the founding of our church that Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol. So there's some congruity there, and that gave me a starting place. And I also thought, it's the Sunday after Christmas. We can do some things that are different. We'll be a little off the wall, so this time I'm going to have you help me out some with the sermon. So it's going to be interactive again, and I'm looking, and I think I'll get some good responses from you guys. I'm really quite pleased. I was a little afraid it was going to be Ken and I and the ushers, and I wasn't sure how that was going to go. But God has been good. So I want to start out with a question for you guys, and it's this. When I say Ebenezer Scrooge, what is the first thing that pops into your mind? Bah humbug. Greedy.
Tortured soul.
A tortured soul. Okay, what would you say if I said that we all need to be Scrooges? Hold that thought. I'll explain it as we go. We'll circle back. But I want to go back for just a second and set our context of all. And put this in the context of Christmas and of the message from Luke. And we'll look first at that first scripture passage. I can speak. And there's an interesting contrast between the two passages. The first passage is immense, it's vast, all-encompassing. And then the second in Colossians is much closer. And we have in Christmas the vastness of God, the celestial host, the angels, and then we have a baby in a manger. One small child in a manger. And I don't think the contrast is accidental. We, for all of our power and ingenuity and ambition, we're nothing compared to the God who has created everything. I mean, even the sea monsters in the deep and the highest heavens, all of that. So at our most awesome, we're pretty small. And that's a good thing to remember. But at the same time, Christmas tells us that God reached out to us as people, to his creation in a very concrete and personal way through that baby in a manger. God reached out to be with us. Emmanuel, God with us. Silent Night talks about the hopes and fears of all the years coming together, and that is us as humans, our past, our present, our future. There in the presence of God who is like us, and yet so much more beyond us. And that is a great cause for celebration and rejoicing. In that there is grace and light and hope and joy. In that there is a great motivation to bring that light and hope and joy out to the other people that we run into, that are part of our world, that we share it with, and who are very vital to our own lives and to our life as a society. I want to ask, when we look at where we are now with Christmas, how much joy and hope do we really see? And this is not a participatory question. I'll let you know when I want the answers. I want you to just think about this one for a minute and look at where we are and and how far in some ways we've come from Bethlehem. And Dickens was looking at this, I think, in part when he wrote A Christmas Carol. And he shows us a person in Scrooge who has totally not gotten the concept of grace and sharing and joy with Christmas. Missed the boat completely. Scrooge focuses on money, on rules and laws and regimentation, having control and security. And very narrow is Scrooge's world. I liked, Rob, your comment, tortured soul, because if you look at Scrooge, he's not like one of these gazillionaires who jumps on jets and has feasts all the time and, you know, the softest of softest sheets and all that. That's not Scrooge. Scrooge lives a pretty solitary life when we first meet him. He lives in a very drab place, and he's eating gruel, and it's cold. I mean, not only is he having Bob Cratchit be cold, his house is cold too. Very narrow. There is darkness. There is no light with Scrooge at that point. He is apart from God and apart from people. And so I ask you, this is a participatory part. I did them in red in my sermon. So I want to ask you, and you can take this either as you personally, or the broader you of us as in our time and place. Feel free to go either way. How are you like Scrooge? The beginning of the book, Scrooge. And what are the roots of our Scrooginess? I have created that word for this occasion. What are the roots of our Scrooginess? Worry? It's a good one. I think there's a lot of what drove Scrooge to be who he was worry.
Self-centered.
Self-centered. Mm-hmm.
He was mostly bitter.
Bitterness.
Bitterness.
Okay. So all the things and ways, the worries and the fears and all of those things that we have that we can see in Scrooge. And a desire, I think, I myself to control things. I get really uncomfortable when things are beyond my control, which kind of means the last couple of years have been like, but we can, I think, identify all, and a lot of it goes back to who we are, our experiences as a child, our experiences growing up, and also just where we are in our trust with God. I know that my need for control is like God saying, let it go, trust me, and I am working on that. And I think for Scrooge, and then also for us as a congregation as we look at past, present, and future, because we know Scrooge does past, present, and future. And if you remember our motto, those of you who were here 25 years ago when we did the 150th anniversary, that's the core of the motto that we came up with for that was the past, the present, and the future. So we have that, and Dickens gives us some ghosts or spirits to help along. There's 4 of them if you count Marley, and I definitely count Marley, that help us to look at what is real and what isn't, what's important and what isn't. And as an aside, if you want to look and see where I think Dickens may have gotten his concept for Christmas Carol, though I could be wrong, I did not research it. Look up in Luke chapter 16, verses 19 to 31, and read the story of the rich man and Lazarus. And you'll see where the rich man is saying, well, please send someone back to my brothers to tell them so that they don't make the same mistake that I made. And so Marley's kind of doing that for Scrooge. He's telling them. And I think the one really interesting thing that struck me about Marley, and think on this one for a little bit, because we have the kind of an idea of what hell or purgatory or those kinds of concepts might look like. And for Marley, the key word is regret, is seeing things that he wants to reach out and fix now that he's in a different place, and he can't. and of seeing things in the past, and now he can't do anything to fix it and remedy it. So I think that's a really interesting picture of what's going on, and that sense of the disconnected, of that isolation, is that regret. But we have, beyond Marley, we have three ghosts in Dickens. We have past, present, and future. The ghost of Christmas past, which is how we got where we are, basically. And the ghost of Christmas present, kind of from Scrooge, is what we're missing, maybe what's not in our current life. The ghost of Christmas yet to come, what will happen if nothing changes? And I think there's some of that for us as a church as well. As we look, we see what brought us here, the good that we celebrate, and just the stuff that's happened and has brought us to where we are now. And the possibilities for the future. All of that kind of together. Sort of like Ebenezer Scrooge, though I think not quite alike. And then we see those themes in the Christmas story too. I think Friday night we had bits of the idea of the past and the house of David, that legacy, of what God has done in Israel, and Jesus being that culmination. So we have the past that brought us to this place. We have the present, which is celebrating angels and shepherds, and that idea of let's go now and see in the present. And then a future look, and this child is the Savior, the Messiah. And what does that mean for us in the future and looking forward? So that Silent Night says, the hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. Some of that going on. So this time, I want you to stop and think, but no speaking this time. I mean, if you really feel compelled, feel free. But just think in a minute on these kind of questions. Just think about your own past, present, and future in kind of this context. How did you get to where you are? Good and bad. What have we got and what's missing? And what will happen if nothing changes? Where do you see your Scrooginess showing? And where do you see God's grace? So just think for a minute. This is one of those, like the silent part in the prayer of confession, so we'll just let you think for a minute or two. Okay, so I want to give you another little bit of a different idea, I think, maybe. And Sandy, this may not be, who's in the Bible study, we've done Scrooge. It may not be as new, but I want you to think of Scrooge, Ebenezer Scrooge, as kind of a written testament to God's grace. And we don't usually think of Scrooge and God's grace in the same sentence, but they really do belong together. If you have not read the book, I encourage you to do so. We all know the story. We've seen it in 100 different places. We've seen it performed on the stage. We've seen movies. Scrooge McDuck pops to my mind. In so many forms. When I started this, I'm not sure I actually had ever read the whole thing. And it's short. And it's everywhere. So I would encourage you to read the book, because not everything has made it into all of the different presentations of it. But Scrooge really is an illustration of God's grace. And it reminds us that the message of Christmas is that our past is not what defines us. It influences us, it's shaped us, but it will not bind us unless we let it. We can change with God's help. And Christmas is God saying, I know you need help. Let me send you my son, who can show you the way that I want you to live. And better yet, can ultimately enable you to break free from all of the ways that you keep failing. I get it. I understand you, and I'm sending you an answer. If you will just accept it. When we look at Scrooge, we see in his change, if you read that very, very last chapter, and it always gets condensed down to just the kid and the goose and all that, but read the whole chapter. And you'll see that Scrooge goes from having rules. There's a poorhouse. We have policies and procedures. We don't need to worry. He goes from rules to grace, to just abundance. Oh, hey, guy, not only go get the goose, but here, let me pay for you to get a cab to take you to get the goose and to get the goose to Bob Cratchit. He goes from invisibility, from just not seeing people, and also really hiding in a lot of ways. People didn't really see Scrooge either. They just kind of like, oh yeah, Scrooge. He goes from being invisible and seeing others as invisible to visibility. People see him, and he sees people, individual, real people. And he goes from very controlled. I picture Scrooge like this in the beginning, and at the end, I picture Scrooge like this. And the word that predominates is laughter and it's joy, and it's such a noticeable change from what, the beginning part to the openness. And that is God's grace at work. That is the interaction of God in our lives, of bringing us from our rigidity to God's grace, our narrowness to God's grace. And this brings us up to Colossians, which sort of answers the question of now what? If all of this happens, how are we supposed to live small right now here? How does all this affect us today and tomorrow? And Colossians is a really cool passage. I told Doug at first that I might not stick to the lectionary. I've preached this Sunday a few times. Pastors generally are allergic to the Sunday after Christmas. And I'm like, okay. And I looked at the passages in the lectionary. I said, oh, cool. These will work really well. Colossians is one of my favorites. And it asks, how do we live as God's people in the day-to-day? Like Scrooge. Because Scrooge, one of the best things is he was in the present. And how do we live in the present? And if you look, there's a lot of really awesome things going on. I think I've lost my place a little here. Okay. I jumped a little. I'm going to do a little invert here and trek back to Scrooge for 1 second, because I do want to talk about focusing on the small before I go into Colossians a little bit. And we see that in Scrooge. And probably. Sorry about that. You're fuzzy now. This is better. I want to really focus on the way Scrooge noticed people and how he genuinely delighted in them after his 3 ghost experience. He enjoyed being with them. He saw their needs, and was able, and delighted in helping them. He delighted in their company and playing games with his, at a party with his nephew's family. I think one of the key things, and I hit on it a little bit, is the idea of invisibility. Doug talked a couple weeks ago about contempt, how when we can have contempt for people, that puts them down. I think invisibility is a very similar thing. I think we can see people or not see them. In a couple ways, we can see a role, but not a person. We can see the clerk at the grocery store. We can see the maintenance worker. We can see the financial advisor, but we see a role. We don't see a person behind the role. They're invisible. And we can see a problem and not a person. We can see homelessness as a problem, or illness or anger as a problem, and not see a person. And sometimes we just simply don't see the people we share the planet with. I mean, how many times have you walked through a shopping mall or down the street or through your neighborhood, and, you might nod at people, oh, neighbor, got it. But do we know these people? Do we interact as if they are real individual people? I think an awful lot of times we just have our mission and we go on. and we don't see them. And God calls us to see them. And I think Colossians then addresses that, how do we see? How do we interact with real people on a day-to-day basis? Colossians starts off with living as those beloved by God. So we're back to Christmas and that gift of love and the rootedness of how we interact with other people. That is in God's love for us. We show that love. And as we show that love, these things happen. But that's the foundational part. We are beloved by God. God who came to live with us and be with us. And what does that look like as we interact with each other? Compassion. Really seeing things from another person's perspective. Feeling the hurt. I think of, rejoicing with those who rejoice and weeping with those who weep. Compassion. Kindness. How basic. Letting that person trying to merge onto 202 in front of you, even though they're really a little slow. Helping somebody. Smiling at somebody and greeting them. Basic kindness. Patience, because we're all imperfect, just in different ways. But patience with the people around. Patience with the woman who's going through the coupons one by one at the checkout stand, and you're looking at your watch. Patience when there's somebody who has an opinion different from yours. Patience when someone does something that hurts you in some way, or little or big. Patience. And forgiveness when maybe it's a bigger hurt. And forgiveness when that person does something wrong that we think, oh no, they did. Fill in the blank. But forgiveness. Because holding on to the score sheet is helpful to no one. That's a Scrooge thing. That's Scrooginess. Get rid of that. And ultimately, love, which shows itself in a lot of ways. It's not necessarily a warm, fuzzy Christmas morning hug. Sometimes it's a cold January morning at the bus stop hug. And sometimes it's reaching out and talking to someone for half an hour when your watch is saying, 5 minutes is about all I have. Love is getting to know people as they are. The good and the bad, because we all have that. Love is remembering who God is and that God loved us. And thankfulness. That's another holiday. We're thankful for one day, and we celebrate Christmas for one day, and boy, have we got that wrong. Maybe we should have one day when we're not thankful, and one day when we don't give, if that meant we would be thankful and give the rest of the year, but probably not. But thankfulness in all circumstances. And Paul writes, I'm thankful in all things. In the good times I'm thankful, and in the bad. And it's like, okay, so yesterday when my sister called and said my niece was sick and we weren't going to do Christmas, that's thankfulness. Okay? It's thankfulness in all things, disappointments and joys, all of it. Thankfulness. Colossians tells us to live small and here and now. In living small, we may change further, because all change, I think, begins inside us and in the people that we come in contact with. But Colossians calls us to live daily lives in this world. There was a song in the 80s that came to my mind as I was working on this, that by Amy Grant, called My Father's Eyes. And I liked it a lot, and it plays in my mind sometimes, and it calls us to see people the way that God sees them. To see them as people, God's creation, all the good things, the strange things, the bad things, but all God's creation, God's person, to see people the way that God sees them. And that if you're going to have a soundtrack playing in your mind, it's not a bad one. And the song's sort of singable too, so if you want to look it up. But we're called to be that and see that. We're called to live in the present with the people that we encounter each day. And in that begins change for us and for them. And the last bit is a real challenge, I think. And I think it sort of sums it up very nicely in that whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything, in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Whoa, there's a challenge. So if you're going to go home and watch the Eagles game, do it. But do it with Jesus. And you have to realize our views of Jesus don't do a lot of celebration. But I think Jesus would have watched the Eagles. He probably wouldn't have trash talked, but that's okay. So whatever you do, in that time when you're watching the Eagles with friends and family, or you're texting someone, do you believe that catch? Do it as if it's Jesus. Do it for Jesus. As we interact, as we're grocery shopping, as we're driving. It's a good thing in sanity to be that old "what would Jesus do" moment thing, and it's like if it doesn't kind of pass the test, maybe we shouldn't be doing it. But keep that in mind, because it's in the small stuff. Christmas is in the small stuff. So which brings me to my next question for you guys. If we look at the change in Scrooge, and we look at Colossians, I want to ask you, how can we be more like Scrooge at the end of A Christmas Carol, not the beginning? How can we be more like the Scrooge at the end?
With grace.
Grace? Gratitude? Joyful? I think very much living in the moment. Laughing. Enjoying this amazing creation that God has given to us. All the cool people he's put us on the planet with. Sometimes annoying, but basically kind of cool. Enjoying them. And just the diversity around us to be joyful people. And so like I told the children, as I told you, God's children, consider leaving a Christmas decoration out all year to remind you of Bethlehem, to remind you of the smallness that changes the world, that one baby, the grace of God, and how we can and should live that way always for that child, giving thanks to God. And in that, and I'll leave you to think about this one as you go, and just keep in your mind then with that, it was said of Scrooge that he kept Christmas well. And I want to have you think, all of us, what does it mean to keep Christmas well? And what does that mean for you? So I'll leave you with that thought for the morning.